Hello, friends. This is a sacred story in honor of the holiday of Shavuot, which begins this Thursday evening and continues on Friday and Saturday. On Shavuot, we celebrate Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. This midrash, this sacred story, is called Medicine from Sinai, a teaching for Shavuot. Our rabbis teach us that when all of the Jewish souls were gathered at Mount Sinai, ready to receive the Torah, it was a cosmic event. The soul of every Jew who was ever or would be born was there, either in body or in spirit. Past, present, and future were fused together in one magnificent, timeless moment. And in that moment, God foresaw the entire history of the Jewish people. There would be wonderful times of joy and beauty with magnificent processions in Jerusalem, and so many loving family meals around the Shabbat table all over the world. Throughout the centuries, Jews would nourish their beings, connecting to the spirit of the Jewish people by learning Torah deep into the night, seeking out the hidden meanings within sacred texts. They would dance in ecstasy as they carried the Torah scrolls around their synagogues on Simchat Torah and sing with pride and strength as they kindled the Hanukkah candles in their homes. Oh, there would be so many wonderful things to celebrate. Births and weddings, songs and poems, the very joy of life itself. But there would also be terrible times of suffering and exile, when the collective soul of the Jewish people would be nearly crushed by sadness. Slavery, the destruction of the temples, the Crusades, the Inquisition, pogroms, the Shoah. So much persecution and so much sorrow. Yes, God could have made a universe where such terrible things never happen. But there would have been no free will. The price of granting freedom to human beings is that they sometimes choose to use it for great harm. But God so valued the wonderful gift of free will that God decided to put up with a world that was often so badly out of balance. Still, God was deeply saddened by the things that would happen to God's people in the future. God could see that there would be times when the suffering would be so horrible and the persecution so brutal that the joy within Judaism would almost be crushed under the weight of sadness. This sadness would become bitterness, and a dark heaviness would enter the community of Israel. At such times, some Jews would forget the joy of Sinai and would see their Jewishness as nothing but a burden to be cast off at the first opportunity. But my friends, where there is illness, there must also be a cure. So God designed a medicine right there at Sinai. What did God do? The Holy One called aside some of the Jewish souls and said, I see in the future that there will come times when the Jewish people will be filled with deep, deep pain. From the very day that they are born, they will be so severely persecuted by the surrounding nations that their souls will become weighted down with depression. This depression will prevent them from soaring into the realms of joy for many generations. The souls whom God had called aside were profoundly saddened to hear this dark vision. What can we do? They cried out in despair. God replied, today I have already planned the medicine, but I need some brave volunteers. Would some of you be willing to go into exile, to remain Jewish souls, but be born among the Gentiles? You will grow up in safety and not be persecuted as Jews, but you will also feel out of place among the nations and will long to return to your own people. Your mission will be to carry the joy of Sinai in your hearts, protecting it from bitterness. Whenever the suffering becomes too great for my people to bear, some of you will convert to Judaism and bring back the happiness that you feel here today at Sinai. You will be like time release medicine, lying dormant in the world until you are needed. Upon hearing what their mission would be, the souls whom God had called aside were silent for a very long time. This was a very difficult thing that God was asking them to do, to spend so many incarnations among the nations that would oppress the Jewish people, to live so many lives alone and alienated. Yet in the end, the souls agreed to take on this amazing and deeply important task. God blessed them all and said, you shall be known as Shomrei HaSimcha, the keepers of the joy. And so it happened, down through the centuries, that in every generation, a few of these keepers of the joy have converted to Judaism. Sometimes the Jews who were born as Jews were so filled with pain that they could not understand the bubbling enthusiasm of the keepers of joy, and sometimes they resented them. But gradually, their joy would spread among the people and balance would be restored. In past centuries, the keepers of the joy only came in twos or threes because there were persecutions. Although there were persecutions, there was also a great faith and commitment among the Jews. However, in the 20th century, there came along the Nazis and their leader, Adolf Hitler. The suffering under Hitler was so severe, so utterly, unspeakably horrible, that the light of the Jewish people was almost extinguished. Some Jews who survived the Holocaust felt utterly abandoned by God and humanity, and many were unable to feel any joy for decades afterwards. And so it happened that in this generation, at the end of the 20th century, more time-released Jewish souls are returning to Judaism than ever before. This is why there are such large numbers of converts in modern times, and why they are so filled with this enthusiasm, this lust for life. They are not really Jews by choice, as they sometimes call themselves, but the souls who are already Jewish, completing their mission from the days of Sinai. They are the keepers of the joy. If you look at the happenings, my friends, you might still want to come into Berkeley for our East Bay Communal Shavuot celebration, as I mentioned last week, and in the happenings that Rabbi Jamie and I will be teaching, and we'd be happy to drive folks who want to carpool with us. Just call and let the office know. I hope to see you on the mountain at Sinai. Stay safe and be well. Shalom uvracha, peace and blessings, and Chag Sameach. Happy Shavuot.